Trigger was a silver screen gold hero. Carried Roy to victory in his prime.
Greetings, horse enthusiasts across America. I'm René Turnbull, and this is IHA Live. Tonight we have a very special guest who, along with her quarter horse Astro, have an amazing story. It's a story about winning on a blind horse. What makes the story unique is that the human in the horse and rider team is an amateur natural horsemanship student who got her first horse in her 40s, and she does not make her living in horses. Before I introduce her, I want to reflect on the last nearly 3 years since I began hosting the Bay Area Savvy Players Learning Teleconference on Zoom in January of 2019. And I want to give some appreciation and love for some of the key volunteers for the IHA who created this non-denominational, nonprofit organization and this IHA Live teleconference forum where excellent horsemanship unites. It was long before the pandemic that IHA President Farrah Green of Wyoming that encouraged me to use Zoom. And I'm thankful for the IHA members across the US and Canada who've been supporters of our learning teleconferences. And I was excited when Farrah asked me this year to become the regular host for the IHA Live. I also want to thank my good friend Lisa Rask of Texas, who has been very supportive of this forum, and to me personally as a journalist covering the ongoing revolution in horsemanship. Jill Holmes of Georgia is a very enthusiastic and encouraging volunteer for the IHA, and I want to acknowledge her enthusiastic support for this forum. All of these amazing ladies, Farrah, Lisa, and Jill, along with some others, have invested a huge amount of volunteer time in developing the IHA. And this month, they're going to proudly release the 10th edition of the IHA Journal, the magazine of the International Horsemanship Association. The IHA Journal is a volunteer labor of love, and it's been an honor for me to contribute my journalism to that magazine. I'm especially excited that this fall-winter 2021 edition features a cover story that I wrote about winning on a blind horse. Farrah, Lisa, and Jill have wanted me to write that story because it's not one that just hits home. It's literally from my own home here in California. And it's about my amazing wife, Renee, and the big quarter horse that I bought her named Astro. I personally witnessed the story of Renee and Astro, and I'm incredibly proud of how they both took life's lemons and turned them into lemonade. It's also a story about how a foundation in relationship-based natural horsemanship and the creativity of a phenomenal natural horsemanship instructor helped this horse and rider team take on the horse's blindness and find a way to help them to not only return to their open trail obstacle sport to compete, but to go on and win more championship buckles. I met our guest in 1995 when she was a first-year graduate student at the University of California, Santa Barbara, pursuing her PhD in statistics. I remember when she became a community college professor of math and statistics, and one of the most memorable days of my life was October 7th, 2017, when she and I rode our horses into our wedding. As the groom, I rode in on Sunny, and my bride, Renee, our guest today, rode in on her quarter horse, Astro, who was already blind in one eye due to equine recurrent uveitis. It was at the end of a horseback ride last year when Renee and I got the news that she had been promoted to Dean of Natural, Social, and Applied Social Sciences for Contra Costa College, a community college in San Pablo, here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Indeed, tonight is the first time our IHA Live guest does not make a living with horses. She's a recreational rider. Yet thanks to our access to excellent natural horsemanship education, our 2-decade relationship with several amazing natural horsemanship professionals, especially Bowman of Livermore, who's on the call, and my wife's student always dedication to lifelong learning, René has an amazing story of perseverance to tell us tonight. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce the love of my life, who thankfully joined me on this amazing lifelong journey with horses. Please welcome to the IHA Live, my special guest and wife, René Turnbull. And the crowd goes wild. Hello, René.
Hi there.
Good. We see you there in your office up in San Pablo.
I could not make it home in time.
No worries. We're happy to see you. Hey, honey, before we start, I want to recognize somebody in the audience who just joined the Pirelli Foundation as the executive director. His name is Anthony Linquata of Thousand Oaks, California. We are so excited about having him aboard. I'm a member of the board there, and we got Anthony. Anthony, would you say hello for just a moment?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me this evening. I really appreciate the invitation, Andrew.
Well, that's great, and thank you for being a part of us. Okay, let's get started, René. René, before Astro was born in 2005, you'd already studied natural horsemanship with Sandy Parker, Cezanne de Cristoforo, Dave Ellis, Dave Lichman, and you and I regularly attended the Savvy conferences in Colorado. Please tell us your memories of the early years of your journey into natural horsemanship, first with Sunny, then with Dutch Boy, both of whom turned 25 this year.
Oh, well, thank you everybody for having me here today to talk about horses. What could be more fun? When I first got involved with horses, I was riding my friend's horses, and I lived in Bakersfield, and Andrew lived in the Bay Area, and we dated long distance for 3 years like that. I was riding my friend's horses. My friends were into natural horsemanship, and so that's what I started learning. And then when Andrew decided he wanted to buy me a horse, and I said not until my youngest son gets out of high school, because there was too much. There's soccer, there's all those mom things, marching band and everything you have to do. So literally on the night of my son's graduation party, Andrew was making the deal for us to go see Sonny and buy him. And Sonny, being an 8-year-old son of Salty Doc, was probably too much horse for my first horse. He was too much horse for me. I kept him for 6 months. I did a lot of playing with him, a lot of learning with him, did some clinics with him, worked with Cezanne worked with him. And then Andrew's horse, Dutch Boy, came up lame, and Andrew wanted to go to a clinic, and I'm like, well, come and get Sonny, because the week before Sonny had bucked me off while I was chasing cows around. Really, probably not the right thing to do. He was just excited, and I was unprepared. So Andrew picked up Sonny that weekend and took him to a clinic, and I never got him back.
Yes, Sonny's been my partner for 16 years since that happened.
I never got him back. I started riding Dutch Boy, and Dutch Boy's a 16-1 foundation quarter horse who's the sweetest left brain introverted guy in the world. And although he'd already been through a couple of levels of Pirelli and had learned a lot, he never let me just have what he knew. I had to earn it. And so I spent the next couple of years really going to a lot of clinics, really understanding separation, isolation, putting things back together, and earning the trust of Dutch Boy, and competing on him, having a lot of fun, and then noticing and going through his health issues, the things that started with Andrew when we traded horses in the beginning, they became persistent and ongoing, and it was clear that he wasn't going to be a long-term partner for me. And then Andrew got me a Christmas present.
So thank you for that. And then when Dutch Boy's ongoing health issues, you realize it's time to get another horse. We bought Astro. Tell our viewers about the nearly 3-year-old quarter horse when we bought him.
He was born on the ranch that we were stabling at, and then once he was weaned, he was sent off to a pasture out in the Central Valley for about 1.5 years to just be a horse. so he was unhandled. When we bought him, they could halter him. He didn't really lead. He had his own ideas about which way he should go, and completely unstarted. I had him for about 6 weeks as we searched around for some of our local instructors and friends that might help us with him, because that wasn't something I was going to do, was start a 2.5-year-old horse. And we sent him off to Sandy Parker for 6 weeks just to teach him some ground games, get him going on the ground games, and I could play around with him for a while. If he had some ground games, I was certain that I could play around with him a while, work with that for a while before we got him under saddle. We took him out to Sandy Parker, got him in the trailer. He didn't back out of a trailer. I can't even imagine for how long. But we got him in the trailer, we got him out of the trailer, and he stayed there. She called me at 6 weeks and said, he needs to stay a little longer. He's just a little bit of a tough nut. He very, very left-brained, as we would find out. And he just had his own ideas. The one thing she did say is that she would put the groundwork on him, but she would not start him under saddle. She wasn't starting colts anymore, she told us. And so when we got him back, I was playing with him a bit. We actually called David Lichman, and David said, Bo is right there, just call Bo Man. And Andrew knew Bo, and I didn't. And so Andrew made arrangements for me to go out and see Bo and, basically interview her and find out if I wanted her to start my horse for me. And I remember going out to the ranch that she was at, and she was in a stall with a young stallion with a rope on his leg, and she was very calmly talking to me and picking his foot up and putting it down and picking it up and putting it down and picking it up and sometimes leaving it up and then putting it down and picking up and putting it down. And we talked for about an hour and a half, and as she walked out, she says, I think this will do. She gave him a rub and a scratch and everything, walked out, and she says, this horse has never been handled, and tomorrow he has to have farrier work. And that is how she prepared him for the farrier. And I thought, and that's how I want my horse handled. So Astro went to stay with Bo for a couple of months. And then I started taking lessons with Bo with Astro so that I could understand him and how he was being brought up.
And though you and Dutch Boy had achieved success winning a reserve championship in trail trials in the advanced division, tell us what it was like to start all over again with Astro in the novice division of trail trials.
Oh, dear heavens. So even though Astro could do things from the ground and he could do things from the saddle, it didn't mean he always would. And so he was a baby. He was 3.5, 4 years old. We weren't doing anything hard. Trail trials is walk along, be given some instructions, and then have your horse do that. And even at the novice level, I remember one of the hardest things we had to do in Astro's very first trail trial was side pass, because he wasn't operating all parts of his body together at the same time. I remember saying, okay, how am I going to get him to side pass? Well, I'll move his shoulder a foot, then I'll move his hindquarters, then I'll move his shoulder, then I'll move his hindquarters. And I got him to side pass where he was supposed to do it, but it was a very slow and methodical process. And I was a little insulted when I got the comments back from that particular obstacle when the judge said that my horse was dull. He wasn't dull, he just didn't know anything. So it was hard to go from a horse where I could click and he would pick up a trot and I could raise my body up and he would lope. It was hard to go from that to, oh man, how do we side pass? But we just started over. It's just baby steps, a lot of support.
One of the things I remember about Astro that was unique was he was a vertical bucker, and being a left brain introvert, he bucked for sheer joy. But I was quite sure that he wanted to be in the national finals rodeo as a bucking horse. Tell me about how you and Bo dealt with that.
As I've been told and as I've learned, is when they're very young, they're often pretty compliant. The horses are often pretty compliant, and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll try that. Yeah, sure, I'll try that. And as they become teenagers, just like our own teenagers, it's like, No, you can't make me. I don't have to do what you say.
Different side.
I'm bigger than you. And Astro got my number pretty quick. He put his head down between his legs and he could buck like a saddle bronc. He could buck. He could throw his hind legs over his head. I've got video of him bucking unbelievably. And he got my number pretty quick because I was not interested in coming off of him. I've been off of him in the time that I've owned him, 16 years. I've been off of him 3 times, and that was in like the first 4 years. And then my goal was, how do I keep him from bucking? And it wasn't really how do I keep him from bucking, as Bo explained it to me, it is how do we help Astro find another way to either say yes or no without bailing out and going to the fit. And so it was a lot of language. He's I could be riding on a trail with 3 other horses and I would say, I think I have to get off. And everybody around me would say, he looks fine. And I said, but you are not riding him. He has ants under his skin and I can feel every muscle in him tensing up. And again, they say, he looks fine. And I'm like, nope, I got to get off. I get off and I send him out in a circle to see if he just had some energy he needed to get rid of. And he starts bucking like a crazy horse, and my stuff is flying out of saddlebags. It's a yard sale. Stuff is going everywhere. I could feel it. Other people couldn't see it, but I could feel it. So it was a matter of paying attention and feeling him and then getting the help he needed. And there was many a times when I was riding with Bo and she says, if you need me to ride him, and I would jump off and hand her the rope. Because he created fear in me because of the bucking. And that was something that I had to overcome with him.
Well, and part of it was because of his left brain introvert nature. He's a lazy horse. He's still one of the laziest horses I've ever seen in my life. And would you agree that he was using bucking and the threat of bucking as a means to get you to stop making him work? Yeah.
So yeah, as a teenager, yeah, I would say that, but I wouldn't really use the word lazy as much as I would use opinionated. He decided he didn't want to do that, or if I don't want to pick up a lope, or I don't want to trot anymore, I'll snaky neck and I'll tuck my head between my legs and I'll make you get off. And he would.
Yeah, well, and I remember,
you have to stay on.
I also remember Bo was having about, oh gosh, you'll have to remind me, it felt like 6 weeks. Every Wednesday we would go and Astro had to have a little session in learning that bucking wasn't the answer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so this was when there was an outbreak. Well, I can't even remember what the outbreak was at the time, but they really quarantined all the horses to the ranches. So the horses couldn't travel. We couldn't travel around here, and we had been going out for once a week lessons out to Bo's ranch. And she came into our ranch and she says, since we have to stay here and let's go ahead and just really work on this. And she helped him find another way to express himself or to respond to the pressure when asked to move left, to move right, to pick up speed, to back down, and to really to feel the adrenaline that would come up and to know how to handle it. And so that's what the bucking ends up happening is by being a very low key horse. When the adrenaline comes up, he doesn't know how to handle it. So he goes, woohoo, and bucks. And he had to learn how to bring the adrenaline up and then bring it back down. And Bo and her daughter Shondell, because Shondell, I think, was sort of the guinea pig on the horse. And that girl can sit anything. She's got Velcro on her booty. She was helping, so they were helping him from the ground and from the saddle at the same time until he could take the energy, think about it, and move with it, and not feel like adrenaline was just lighting a firecracker.
and so you progressed, and then we got in. Time went on, and you and Astro won your first state championship in the novice division in 2011. A year later, you won the intermediate buckle at 2012. And in 2015, you and Astro tied for the advanced state trail trials championship for our age group. Tell us about that part of your journey.
The championships?
Well, your movement, becoming a champion, kind of getting used to being a champion and moving up divisions. Tell us about that process.
Well, Astro was learning more and we were learning more with each other. I was still only riding him in a rope hackamore. Occasionally in lessons, we would put a bridle on, but not very much. But I did all the competitions in a rope hackamore. And he wasn't a precision horse. He was so compliant. He's like happy to do what I ask him to do and not ever looking to do anything more. That's just his nature. I'll do what you want. I'm not going to volunteer anything. Might need a little more effort. I might, you might expect it later. He has, that's probably me anthropomorphizing his behaviors, but he's a very compliant guy and just happy to go along. And he did, and that made him an excellent trail trial horse, because once he learned how to handle his energy and the adrenaline, he was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And now we're just gonna walk along the trail. And now I'm up and I'll pay attention and we'll do the next thing. And then we'll just walk along the trail. And so he got to where he didn't mind so many things. You could put anything on him, around him. He was, I'm not even gonna say desensitized. I don't want to say desensitized because he wasn't dead, but he'd look at it, think about it and go, yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. He did a lot of licking, yawning. Astro's a yawner. So as he works through things, he drops his head, he yawns, he licks. And I could tell when he was ready to do something on the trail. As we walked along, he was tense, and then he'd start to blow. And he'd literally blow deep, heavy, spitty, snotty blows 5 times. On the 5th one, he'd like shake his head and he's like, okay, I'm ready for this. So we had to get him, that was his warm-up. I knew the warm-up was over when the 5 blows came, but he progressed, and working with Bo and the other natural horsemanship trainers, pretty much by then we were working with Bo and Cezanne mostly, and they pushed me with him. They said he was capable of more than I was asking him, and I probably didn't progress with him as fast as anybody else would have, but it was good for him and I, but we did progress. And because he was so compliant, it's not that he was a flashy horse and super talented, but he didn't blow up and he didn't make mistakes. And that's what made him a good trail obstacle horse. He didn't blow up and he didn't make mistakes. He only did what I asked him to do. And I remember other people saying, oh, I want a horse. I want to buy a horse like that. And, I'd walk away shaking my head. I said, you don't buy a horse like this. I spent years being afraid of him bucking, years working with him, on a single foot, years with me trotting and Bo saying, you need to trot him faster. He needs to go faster. You need to push him. I'm like, I'm going as fast as I can. And I found out later that she was riding behind me. Just, she's riding just a half a horse length behind me, tagging Astro on the butt to make him trot faster because I wouldn't push him hard enough. And she knew it was me that was holding him back, not him. So it took a long time. And I was very proud of him as he advanced.
Hey, honey, really quick, let's step back for a minute, because I'm realizing not everybody on the call understands what a trail trial is. And
okay, I'll talk about that.
Why don't you explain trail trials? Yeah.
Yeah, so trail trial is a 5 to 8 mile competition on the trail. All kinds of terrain, sometimes really steep mountains, sometimes flat wide fire roads. And you're asked to do obstacles by a judge at a particular level, novice, intermediate, advanced. you ride up to the judge, you announce your number, you announce your level, and they read you the instructions for that obstacle. You will do things on the trail that you would normally do. You will drag something. You might go up and down a hill in a flag course, showing how your horse can maneuver very tight turns. You might walk, trot, lope, so you'd have some gait changes. You might move through a gate forward, backwards. You know how many different ways there are to move through a gate if you count right hand, left hand, push, pull, and forward and backwards through gates. There's a lot. Let's look at the combinations. Sorry, that's the math of me coming out. So there's all these different things you can do on a trail, and the idea is to go do that as the best you can. And in trail trials, points are bad. A 0 score is good. A 0 score means you manage the obstacle in a good way and didn't get any basically demerits. You did it correct and right, and your horse was with you, and you worked as a partnership. If you get your horse through it and you're pulling on his face and he's really not wanting to do it, but you're making him do it, all of those things are scored in trail trials. So you really do have to have a partnership to make it look good and to do well.
And so one of the things obviously then is, isn't it fair to say a Natural Horsemanship Foundation is part of how you came to get to these high levels in trail trials?
And that was the comment about, I want to buy a horse like that. And it's like, you don't buy a horse like that. You make a horse like that with your relationship with your horse and the time you spend with them, and how you move through the world with that horse. You don't, jump on your horse once a month and have them go out and do something for you. You go out and you're with your horse. And these 8 to 10 obstacles that we would do, sometimes 12, in state championship, 22 obstacles, 24 obstacles sometimes in 2 days. You have to be really with your horse, and you have to listen to them, and hence they have to listen to you. So the partnership is, I think, the key, and that's it. Is Astro wasn't the most talented horse. He's not the most talented horse, but we had a partnership, that made us very successful.
That's great. So near the end of 2016, after you had your 3 championships, you took Astro to see Dr. Marty Gardner in Ione, California, who is renowned in these parts of the United States as a below-the-knees lameness specialist. Yet you learned something about Astro's sight thanks to a veterinarian technician moving a large object around Astro while he was at the clinic. Tell us about that visit.
Yeah, so we'd gone to Dr. Marty again. Astro has always had issues with his feet and some early onset arthritis. And we were getting some imaging done, and the technician moved the machine around to the right to be in front of his right foot, and Astro wrapped his head around and looked down at it with his left eye. And he looked up at me and he says, "Can he see out of that right eye?" And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because, I can go back to little things that bothered Astro or have been bothering Astro. Oh, he ran into the fence the other day. He's just clumsy. He turned into me and almost knocked me over. I was standing on his right side. Things like that had been happening for a couple of months. And he said, "Can he see out of that right eye?" I said, "I don't know." And Dr. Marty grabbed a scope, turned off the light, looked in his eye, and said, "There's problems here." They literally got on the phone and got me into UC Davis. They got me an appointment. I can't remember how quick it was, but it was very quick. He got me into UC Davis to see Dr. Lassling.
So you took Astro to UC Davis Veterinary Teaching Hospital's ophthalmology department, and you met ophthalmology resident Dr. Kelly Nickelbein, who was a veterinarian, and I think she was either in her 2nd or 3rd year of a 5-year residency that you have to do after you're a vet to become an ophthalmologist. faculty advisor, Dr. Mary Lasseline, as you mentioned. Tell us about that trip to Davis. This is a tough part because,
It
and I
was
know,
hard. Okay, I knew this was going to happen. Okay, so we go to Davis. They do an extremely good assessment of his eyes. Dark room, all kinds of dilations, all kinds of, they use sedatives and they dilate and they scope and they look at things, and they take pictures of his retina, of his cornea. They go different levels in his eyes. They have a phenomenal number of people looking at his eyes. And they told me that, sorry.
it's okay, honey. This is clearly shows everybody what kind of emotion we've had in this house during that period.
Okay, they told me he had equine recurrent uveitis. It was the first time I'd heard about uveitis. I'd heard moon blindness and things like that before. Didn't know what it was. They told me about ERU and that he was blind in his right eye. Blind, nothing in his right eye. His left eye was already being affected by it. He had cataracts already, scarring. So he already had limited vision in his left eye, but he had no vision in his right eye. And he was having inflammation. And so they wanted to prescribe some medication and talk about a surgical intervention and everything to help slow down the progression of the disease. And I'm still stuck way back on the word blind. And I mean, I was stuck on that word. I'm standing out in the yard with him on the grass, and again, Dr. Lasseline's going through all his protocol. And I just looked at her. I mean, I've got a 15-3 foundation quarter horse who weighs 1,300 pounds. And he was 11 years old, 12 years old. And they just told me he was blind, and he was partially blind, and he was going to go blind. Like, the prognosis was he's going to be blind. You might be able to save some of his eyesight, but there's no guarantees for that. We can maybe slow down the progression of disease. And I just looked at the doctor. I said, what am I going to do with him? I mean, what do I do? And she said, what have you been doing with him? And I said, I've been riding him. And she says, you see, he's been blind for a long time. It's just you that's finding this out. And so what has changed? And I had to think about that a lot. He's been blind for a long time. It was just me. So then I'm not going to say that stopped the crying. It didn't. I cried a lot. And as you can see, I continue to cry. I spent the next 6 months 9 months, with different protocols, trying to keep the inflammation down, learning all about ERU, learning that it's an autoimmune disease, learning that it usually comes from exposure to leptospirosis, which is a a parasite that you'll find in streams polluted by polluted streams that are I guess contaminated is the better word, contaminated with cow urine, because cows carry leptospirosis and it doesn't affect them. But if a horse gets leptospirosis, often what it does is it triggers ERU as an autoimmune disease. And this has to do with, I'm not sure how much technical stuff you want here, but this has to do with the proteins on the outside of the leptospirosis are very similar to the proteins that are in the vitreous fluid in the horse's eye, and the way the mechanisms work to make the vitreous fluid, and then that the horse's autoimmune system goes, we need to fight this leptospirosis. No, we need to fight this stuff that looks like leptospirosis. And the proteins are similar anyway, so it triggers a autoimmune response. That's what a lot of the horses get it from. Astro had his titers taken and he did not have leptospirosis. So for no reason other than he got ERU, is he got ERU. So he got uveitis. They think maybe his mom might have had it. She had lost an eye and they'd always said it was due to flies. And then I found out from the breeder years later that no, maybe it was from moon blindness, and then, you know, it had gone bad. And there's some data and there's some information on the heritable, they're thinking there's a heritable cause because there's a way higher occurrence of uveitis in Appaloosas and some warm bloods. So they've actually got a long-term research project at UC Davis that's looking at the heritable conditions of uveitis in Appaloosas. So I felt very confident about what they were telling me. I felt very confident about the different things, the different prescribed treatments for him. And the one we decided to do, which was at the time was the most aggressive one, which was putting a cyclosporin disc in his eye, the remaining eye that had sight but was still having the flare-ups, and putting a cyclosporin, implanting that just underneath the eyelid, to where it would be a constant application of the cyclosporin, just to slow down the number of occurrences of the flares. And it did for a bit, but he ended up with glaucoma, and you have to treat the horse with the same medication that you treat a human with glaucoma. But glaucoma happens glaucoma isn't uveitis, but uveitis, the scarring that happens in the eye and keeps the eye from running the vitreous fluid through the eye, because your eye is actually porous and fluid's made and it runs out and it comes in and it runs out and it's replaced. Scarring happens and the fluid can't leave, and that causes the pressure in the eye, and that causes glaucoma, and then it can glaucoma can lead to blindness, even if the uveitis scarring isn't causing the blindness. So you have to fight all these different things that happen because of the uveitis. So we went through all of that, and Astro's eye eventually became bad enough to where the actual lens, there's little structures in your eye that hold your lens in place, and they were destroyed by the uveitis, and his lens fell into the back of his eye. And at that time, when I took him in for that trip, they said, oh, well, don't worry about that. He's just now farsighted. So he could still see, no lens, but he was farsighted. So pay attention to that. And every time something like this would happen, I would notice for a couple of weeks, he needed a little bit extra care, but we would work through that. And then finally, that lens that was floating in his eye tried to come through his iris. And in the process of trying to get it back through his iris, the treatment tore his retina. It was just one thing after another with Astro. And it's like, oh, if I can't make you blind with uveitis, I'll try another way. His body just kept everything that could go wrong with Astro went wrong. And eventually he became just functionally blind, just completely blind. He can see a little bit of light and dark out of the bottom side of his left eye. And I only know that because I've narrowed it down by trial and error. And if he goes from shade to sunlight or sunlight to shade, he shows resistance. He shows that there is a change coming, even if I don't tell him. So he is careful with that. But he's blind now. He's completely blind.
So, honey, back here in the Bay Area, you and Astro were students of natural horsemanship instructor Bowman. We've already said tonight, she started him. She helped you win championships. You consistently studied with her. Tell us how Bo helped you and Astro adapt to Astro's blindness and continue your natural horsemanship relationship.
Well, a lot of tears. I called Bo, cried. And she says, well, we're just going to have to prepare him for this. And so our next lesson, I remember we were at the Livermore Arena, because it was the one place that it was dry. We were having rain and it's covered arena. And she says, we're just going to have to prepare him for this. And I said, what do you mean? She says, we're going to blindfold him and we're going to make sure he listens to you. I said, oh, but he listens to me. She says, really? So she blindfolded him, and Astro, because of his whatever nature, he's like, whatever you're doing, it's fine. She blindfolded him. And then she says, walk, I got him on a rope. She says, walk him out there. She says, ask him to stop before he hits that barrel. So I had him move, and then I said, ho, and he didn't. He ran into the barrel. And she says, so he doesn't really listen to you. She says, you're relying on other things to make him stop. And she made it very clear to me that if I was going to continue to ride him as he went blind and when he was blind, that the most important word for him ever was going to be ho, because he wouldn't be able to see the danger and he could walk me off a cliff. And he had to listen to me far and above, ultimately beyond anything, because that's the only thing that was going to make him safe to ride, was if he could listen to me and if he could stop when I said ho. And I couldn't be, even if I wasn't on him, if I was far away from him, anywhere, he had to stop. And so we started, we did a series of lessons where she blindfolded him, and with him blindfolded, she spent time just helping him listen to what the saddle sounded like. He was saddled and she moved the saddle around and it squeaked. Just regular stuff. But what wouldn't bother him without a blindfold, when she was moving the stirrups and squeaking the saddle, he was concerned about where that sound was coming from because he couldn't see it. Now remember, he could still see out of one eye, so he wanted to see it. And she worked with him, and we worked with him until he was comfortable with noises, regular things like, slapping a stick and string on the ground and tapping the back of the saddle with a string, and just the regular noises. And then we did a lot of walking on line. And when I say ho, you ho, because if you don't ho, you're going to run into that plastic barrel. And he ran into the barrel a number of times before he went, oh, maybe I should listen. And and she helped me, and she says, you're gonna have to talk to him. And we spent so much time in our natural horsemanship with body language. She says, he's not going to be able to have, your body language isn't going to work anymore. You're going to have to talk to him, and he's going to have to listen to you. So you have to come up with those words that are going to mean something to him and be consistent. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And over the years, we've built up about a little more than a dozen words, 12 or 15 words or phrases that mean something to him. And like Bo said, ho was the most important. That's going to save your life. Stop now. The other word that was really important was come. And I chose come. I used to, when I ground tied him, I had a stay command. I used a stay command on him like a dog. I put my hand up, said stay. And he looked at me, I'm like, stay. Drop the rope on the ground, walk away. And I turn around, look at him, and he's like, should I? I'm like, stay. And he's like, okay. And he'd stay. So I already did different commands with him. And I know other people are, they ground type, like, you get back there, you ground type, and they growl or they do something. And I just talk to him, I talk to him. But the word come I used for him to maintain gait and direction. Whatever he was doing, he needed to continue doing that. And a lot of people get on their horse, or they get out, they send their horse out on a line or something, and they'll say, walk on. And you hear that a lot in horsemanship, right? Walk on, walk on, walk on, or trot, trot. And those are words that are commonly used. And I needed to make sure that the words that I used weren't horsemanship words, weren't words that other people use for their horse, because I need to make sure Astro listened to only me. So I use the word come for maintain gait and direction. Whatever you're doing, that's what you need to do. Come. Bo set me on that path and made sure that I always considered the fact that it wasn't that he wasn't doing something right. It's that maybe I hadn't helped him in the right way to understand what I wanted, and how was I going to help him now that he couldn't see me. So it changed our relationship, and it changed the way I looked at him and the way I looked at his behaviors.
Well, that's amazing. We covered this in the magazine article. Well, we have the words that you used with him, and so people who want to follow up on that are welcome to, get the magazine when it comes out. But moving on, in California State Horsemen's Association, in the obstacle sports, there's no provision for a horse's disability, and because you and Astro already won at the state level in the advanced division at the it's the highest possible, you had to keep going in that division.
Yeah.
What was it like to stay at the highest level of your sport now that the game had completely changed? You had to change the way you communicated him, and you realize you're doing this on a blind horse.
I remember the first competition that I took Astro back to. We were up at Carrot Corral, which is a really beautiful campground up in the Sierras. And I came to a 2-day competition with another friend of mine, Susan, and she, we judged the first day, and then we rode the second day. So we volunteered the first day to do some volunteer work, and then it was going to be Astro's first competition ride as a blind horse. And Saturday at the as we're gathering around and everybody's milling, and you camp overnight and stuff, and as we're milling around and doing all that socializing stuff, one of the not so gracious competitors, because most everybody there is just kind and nice and everything, but there's always one or two in a group. One of the not so gracious competitors looked at me and said, so you're just judging this weekend? And I said, no, I judged today. I'm going to ride tomorrow. She said, well, what horse are you riding? I said, Astro. And she said, you're going to ride Astro here? And I said, yeah. And she says, well, that's just cruel. And I turned around, walked away. And my other friend, Ellen, was there. And Ellen was like, don't pay any attention to her. She was very supportive, and other people were supportive. So I went out the next day and I won.
There you go. Hon.
So
That's
there.
a way to respond. That's awesome.
You know, I'd already been writing him and talking to him, and I have to use words to help him transition between different terrain. Like if he goes from sand to gravel, I will say step, 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 so he knows a change is coming. If we have to go up a hill, I say up, and I sit back and give him room to lift his shoulders and get back on his haunches. And I keep saying up, 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 and he lifts his leg a little bit higher and we go uphill. If I say step up, he literally puts his foot against a log, or he moves his foot forward until he feels what it is that we have to step up, drags his hoof up, figures out where the top is, and then lays his foot on top. So he sort of does a little bit of braille. We had to get on top. We had to go around little sections of logs. And a lot of the horses didn't want to go around the little sections of logs. It's that's stupid. Why don't we just go over? Why don't we just go here? Why don't we just go there? But because Astro couldn't see the little sections of logs, he didn't want to go. He had no idea he could go around it. I said, step over. And he picked his leg up, feeling over. I'm like, over, over, over. He felt over. He went over the logs while other horses went off. It got to where he would mind my verbal cues well enough that, you know, he didn't look for the outs that other horses did. And I actually had somebody I actually had a couple people say, hey, that's not fair. Your horse can't even see that. And I'm like, okay, you ride the blind horse. But it was, competing on him was interesting because it brings new meaning to ride every step. You can't just look down the trail and set your hands down and let your horse go. I literally have to tell him every time we go from gravel to sand. If we're going downhill into a creek, I say step, step, step. If I need him to acknowledge something, I'll ask him to put his head down and touch it. Head down, touch, head down, touch. He lowers his head slowly and touches it so he can familiarize himself with it before he moves on, over, or around whatever that thing is. If we have to step up on something high, I'll have him put his nose on it first so he knows how high it is. Head down, touch. Now step up, and he'll know how high to lift his leg.
Step down, and
he did pretty good that first year back. I think the hardest thing I did that year was in the state championships. They told the advanced riders, we walked up and there was a bush and a tree on a hill, a bush and a tree on a hill. And they said, your bridle is broken. Using only your lead rope. Back your horse in a figure 8 around the bush and the tree. And he couldn't see that we were going uphill. So I had to tell him up, guide him with my legs, help him with the lead rope, ask him to back. And then as we came around the tree and going downhill, he had to control the downhill run, you know, backwards, blind, downhill, no bridle. And it was probably the hardest thing ever, but he did it. And then at the end of him doing it, the judge was crying. So she was as proud of him as I was. And we got that first year back from his all of his trials and tribulations and going blind. He won the reserve championship in the advanced in our age group for state.
That's amazing, honey. That's a buckle for being the second, the
Second
state
place.
championship buckle, and then you get a reserve when you're the next one.
Yeah, so second place. I'm sorry, not everybody knows what reserve is. It's the second place buckle. I won't call it the first loser because Astro's never been a loser.
That's for sure. Well,
Uh,
honey, you went. Oh, go ahead, Renee. Go ahead.
Did you want me to talk about the next year?
Yeah, you two came back and you won the state championship.
We did. It was
And
pretty fun.
by the way, just to let everybody know, I'm with Sonny, who had been my partner for probably 12 years by this time. And I took third in both of those events. And so it puts you some perspective as to the competition was not trivial for her to do this.
It's always fun competing against your husband.
And your wife. Yes.
The drive home sometimes can be difficult.
Actually,
No,
what I
Andrew-
love about us is we've always been so supportive of each other.
Andrew's
I
always
was-
been gracious.
Yeah, we've always been excited. And in fact, in his career, Sonny and I never beat Renee and Astro in a trail trial when she made the advanced division. The only time we got close was when I told you earlier that the two of them had won their first state championship in a tie. Well, that tie was against Sonny and me, and both of us got to wear the buckle, and both of our horses were the state champions that year. And I have a photo, Renee. Why don't I bring up the photo of all of our horses? And this photo, this is Astro, and this is 2015. This is Sonny. This is my horse. And Dutch Boy is the one we talked about earlier. Well, Ellen Liebenberg rode him, and all three of our horses won championships. Renee and I, and Astro and Sonny had tied. And of course, we were so proud of carrying home 3 state championships in our trailer that day. This is our 3-year-old granddaughter. And let's see, she was born in 13, so this had to be 16. This is before we really knew much about what was going on. 4th of July. And Little George is her name, and she was riding in the Redwood City parade, which is a pretty big deal. Renee, do you want to say
This
something
one's
about what
Morgan
you
Hill.
remember? Oh,
This
this is Morgan Hill. Okay,
This is
one's
Morgan Hill. It was a long parade, and Astro was more concerned about the goldfish that she had in her snacks on the bareback pad than he was with all the stuff that was tied on him, around him, and everything that was going on. At this point in time, he was this was 16, so he was already blind or partially blind in one of his eyes.
And you didn't know it yet. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. One of the things Renee wanted to talk about, and this is, I just had to go take a picture of this because Susan took it it looks 913, and look at his beautiful eye. And Renee, you wanted to talk about how he looked before his eyes began to have trouble.
Yeah, he's just, he was a beautiful horse, and he had a lot of feeling in his eyes. And, when you look at a horse and you say, oh, he has soft eyes, Astro was like the epitome of soft eyes. He had that soft eye, and he was, this beautiful, handsome, muscular horse. And now he wears a mask to protect his eyes. His eyes have atrophied to where they've shrunk, and so his eyes water. But we keep a protective mask on him because even though uveitis, it's quit progressing, his eyes are still sensitive to the, you can see the difference in his right eye right there, how it actually looks smaller. His eyes have atrophied, and he can't see where he's going, so we put a mask on him. I kept him in a corral for about 1.5 years, trying to protect him and keep him safe from himself, when in fact, the pasture he's been on, well, now he's been on it for more than 10 years, but he'd been on that pasture for like 7 or 8 years. And we let him out to graze one day while we were there working on fences. And like I said, he's got a plastic mask on over his eyes now, so that he doesn't, when he runs into a tree branch or a fence or something, he doesn't hurt himself. But we let him out to graze one day, and he was out with his buddies, and so happy to be out. And then it's like, we got to run and get some lunch. We're working on fences. We're going to be here all day. And we looked at each other and went, well, we'll just lead him out because we're coming back. We came back, we ate our lunch, and we watched him out there following the other horses around and going off on his own and grazing. And we made the decision that day. It's like, he looks fine. He's managing. I mean, we really watched him all day on the pasture, and he managed. And I mean, he had a couple of situations where he followed the other horses up to the other 10 acres through a fence and up to the other 10 acres. And Dutch Boy, the leader of the group, the leader of our herd, he would wait for Astro. When we called them all home at night, he would wait for Astro to find him, and then he would lead them all home. So he knew something's up with Astro. And, you know, one night Astro got lost up there. One day Astro got lost up there and he couldn't find his way home, and the other horses didn't lead him home. So we decided we're keeping him on the smaller pasture. It's only 8 acres instead of, you know, access to 18. But he's a pasture horse. Andrew went out the other day to feed, and Astro was loping up the hill to catch up with his buddies. I've called him down for food, and he puts his head up, and they all know their names. And I've called him down for food, and he's like, I'm coming. He starts out at a dead trot downhill. And I'm like, there's squirrel holes. He knows the pasture. He knows the pathways. And if he happens to hit a squirrel hole, it's like he doesn't fully commit. And as he's going downhill, it's like he's on his haunches. So if he hits it with his front leg, he doesn't, I've never seen him go down for that reason. He has gone down one time on his knees because I didn't tell him to step up. And he ran into a bank and he went on his knees. And he backed up, got back up, and I apologized because that was completely my fault. And when I told him to step up, he stepped up on the bank, and then we went. That was early in our riding where I wasn't riding every step. And that was my lesson there. You know, don't fail your horse.
I got some footage from the Trail Trial State Championship in 2019. I had chosen to take a lot of video and do a documentary, and I had no idea that you were going to win the championship. But let's look at some video that's excerpt. Okay, here we go.
So what I'm telling him here is I'm telling him to step up, and I'm telling him to step over. And every time you see a rock, the difference in the terrain, I'm telling him to step, step, step. And you can see how gently he steps with his front feet because he doesn't know where the ground is. So
I think the trail in and of itself was a challenge, especially yesterday. A lot of down tree, not a groomed trail. We bucked our own trail, and it was a challenge.
Over. Step over. Thank you. Good boy. Couldn't let him do that.
Everybody made it through. We marked it really well, so nobody got lost. That's your number one concern. You don't want anybody getting lost.
yeah.
The champion for Advanced 50 with 36 points on her blind pony Astro is René Turnbull. Her horse nailed it. No problems at all.
Woohoo!
What's your size, Sean? Awesome.
There was a place on that trail where a tree had come down, and they had to take us straight up a hill. You had to step over the tree, and then you had to come down this hill, and there's a big rock in the way. And several horses they went straight up the hill, and they saw the tree they had to step over, they saw the rock, and they bolted and went like up an embankment. It was really awful. They were really worried about Astro getting through that particular area. And
Good boy.
and because Astro couldn't see how bad it was,
Step
we
down.
just walked uphill. And when I saw the rock,
Good
I moved his
boy,
hip
Astro.
over the rock, and then I asked him to
Good
step
boy,
over the
Astro.
log, and he did, and we turned and we came down. And it wasn't the trouble for him that you would expect for the other horses. He by taking away his sight, he didn't have the opportunity to be afraid of what I was asking him to do. He just had to trust me, and he does trust me. I saw here that Farah asked, how long do you think you were competing with blindness and didn't know it? So here's the thing, Farah, he might have been partially sighted in that right eye, maybe his whole life, because one thing that Bo noticed as a trainer, and what I noticed, is that if he was, when he was a baby and we're going down the trail, we're walking along, everything's fine. And, you know, we can see the trash can up there in the park. Everybody can see the trash can. He would get within like 15 feet of the trash can and go, whoa, there's a trash can. And it would happen on the right side and not on the left side. If we think back about it, every time that he spooked and his spooks weren't really bad, he'd go, whoa. And he'd say, how about if we just go that way? It's like, no, let's turn back around and go this way. He had the slow motion spin. It wasn't real fast. His spooks weren't, but he was resistant. But it seemed like he might have been partially sighted. One thing that caused him trouble for his whole life was spotted cowhides. Any kind of spotted cowhide, anything with spots on it. And I sometimes wonder if he didn't really care for cows either. And I'm not sure if the cow flavored barrels, that didn't bother him. Not the black and white, big spots. I'm talking like the little spots, little spotted cows. And the Appaloosa cows. It was very interesting, the things that he was sensitive to now when I think about it.
We have Bo Man on the call. Bo,
Hi, Bill.
could you reach over and unmute so that we can introduce you?
Hi, Bo.
Hi.
I want to introduce Bo, and I know Farah, who's the president of the IHA, was saying earlier, she goes, I want to meet this Bo. Well, hereby you are introduced. Let's have a little conversation here around your perspective of all this, Bo.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really, really sad. I did not feel as devastated because I trusted in Renee's ability to learn and cope, and her relationship with her horse was already from the beginning really good, and he trusted her already from the beginning. However, what I would equal this to, I always think about when I watch her. I unfortunately I didn't get to watch them very often because I always had to stay home at the ranch. But it's like as if you had your best friend and they blindfolded you and said, just follow me. And you knew,
Kitty, kitty attack. There has to be one in every one.
and you knew there were steps, you knew there were drop-offs, you knew there was obstacles along your way, but you had to totally trust this person to guide you through it at the right moment and at the right time. How many of us could say that we would trust them? Because as humans, that's really hard to do. And as a horse, that's even harder.
Astro, up, up.
So
Step
her
up,
learning
step
to
up,
communicate
step
with
up,
him
up,
through
step up, step up.
voice
Good boy, up,
was absolutely
up,
necessary.
step up. Good boy.
And they stuck
Boy,
to it.
Astro.
I mean,
Ooh.
Renee and Astro, they always bring happiness to my eyes. And when I watch them compete, I did get to see her compete at a obstacle challenge. And that was fun. That was at Running Eye. That was fun watching this horse who can't see go up steps and down steps and make right-hand turns very small that other horses can and would fall off of. And he never missed a beat. Him and Renee. It took both of them. To me, that's like the ultimate partnership. Ultimate.
Thanks, Bo.
Yeah.
Astro's a pretty good boy.
I think she should be really proud of that. Starting off with natural horsemanship in the first place, because it is all about your relationship with your horse, having them do things because they want to do them for you. And to see a blind horse compete. I mean, I've ridden the trails, and there's one trail I still want to go back to, and it's the one that she went on that I never got to ride on, but it sounded really exciting because it was tough.
Tough trail.
Yeah, I guess it was Carrot Corral.
Carrot Corral. That was
Yeah.
like,
Step up, step up, up.
yeah.
Single track.
Oh, yeah, 'cause
Single tracks with
I love-
300-foot drop off.
Yep,
Boy, step
but
up, step up,
of Astro picking his way through
over,
these
over.
boulders along a very narrow
down.
trail.
Good boy, and up.
Astro and Renee
Good boy, Astro.
picking their way through these
Good
boulders.
boy.
I mean,
Step
I have a
up,
hard time getting some of these horses that are sighted to do that.
up. Step down,
I have to
Step
go over
down.
and over.
and ho.
And to watch him
Oh.
not stumble or anything, he's just going through them. That's just amazing. So maybe we should all blindfold our horses and train them this way, huh?
So David's had some influence in Renee's time, and David, you probably have some analysis maybe from your long time that you could share with us tonight.
Well, I mean, I think I'm of course I'm impressed, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
because I know Renee, and you know, it's a combination of dedication, immense dedication, and love. I had occasion to meet the gal who has Endo, the blind horse. I don't know if you've seen him, but the two of them are when I met her at the expo up in Canada, I told her, I said, there's only one thing that explains what you're doing here. And I said, it's an extreme case of love, both directions. And so it applies to you too, Renee. It's remarkable, but not surprising to me because I know who you are. Now I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So have you applied a chi-square test of independence to the variations in gait with does it correlate to opening it with the left hand?
I can tell you that the p-value is pretty small, that his right-hand gait is a little bit better than his left-hand gait. Interesting that his, with a small p-value, that's going to be a significant, that's going to be a significant test there.
P is the number of options?
P-value, you know, our probability of a type 1 error.
Okay.
Yeah, if you start throwing around statistical words, buddy.
Yeah, I have to know what all the variables are.
Don't start.
We got
with
our
me.
mathematicians going at it here.
Uh,
I love it.
I told Renee I remember two things. I remember analysis of variance and chi-square, and that was it for my 2 years of statistics.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's
the
pretty
names.
good.
That's all I remember. I don't know how to do it. Now you can just plug it into an app. So, congratulations.
Thank you, David. Farrah had a question asking Bo, was this the first blind horse that Bo trained?
Not really.
No.
I had an occasion when I was about 12, 13 years old in Utah. There was a colt that was, I think it was born not being able to see very well out of one eye, and then the other eye went blind, and they were going to put him down. And I begged him not to. because they said he just couldn't manage anything. He was a Cremello before Cremellos were popular. And the old cowboy, he says, if I could get him to be manageable, they wouldn't put him down. And so I went over after school and worked with this colt. And long story short, I worked with him just in what I thought a horse would want if I was a horse, being that young. And eventually I got to start him as a 2-year-old. And what I did with him, and he was pretty well blind by that time, I rode him at night, mainly because of school, but also because it was really a lot easier to teach him things at night and then work with him in the daytime. Because as a young kid, I realized it was quicker for me to understand not being able to see when you're out in the desert and you can't see either. I don't know. That's just what happened to me with a blind colt. He went on to be this old cowboy's horse, riding horse. I don't know what happened after, but I mean, I think the old man eventually passed away and the son got the horse. And I didn't hear anything after that, but that was René and Astro the first time I've trained one to compete in such a manner. Yes.
You know, I want the president of the IHA and all the work that you do, and I want you to get a chance to talk to René and see if you got some questions you want to talk with René here.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew. It's always such a pleasure to listen to the people that you bring on here. But I have to say, I was really thrilled that you finally convinced René to come on here. And to see her beautiful smiling face is a joy for me, for sure. And René, I just have to say, you know, I met you and Andrew a long time ago, actually, when I first was in the instructor course. I know. Hopefully still am at heart. But you both touched me. You're both so kind and just happy and sharing with your love of horsemanship and your horses. And it's been really fun to reconnect with you both and then learn about your story with your horse over this time. And I know, you know, when you bond with a horse, I mean, I bond with all my horses, but when you spend that much time with a horse and going through all the struggles and tribulations, you know, it's really deep seated. It's part of your soul, and he will always be a part of your soul. So thank you so much for being so open and honest with your journey, even though it's been really hard. It was
cry again.
I know, I'm sorry. But I know it was really hard, but I think it was a beautiful experience for everyone here. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, and you know, honey, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you on was there was several things that we went over tonight and several things that came out of this. And when you were able to finally ride Astro again, and this is before the championship, who knew what was going to, you know, what was your future? But I thought about it when I was here in our house one day, and I looked at you and I said, you know, honey, this is a really unique opportunity for you to show the world what is possible when you have a relationship in natural horsemanship and you have a commitment. And he said, let's look at this journey as a big opportunity to show the world something different. And I got to tell you, honey, I am so proud of you. And even I'm starting to get it here because
don't do it,
because you this is the objective of my work in equine advocacy, and especially getting this opportunity coast to coast and beyond the borders to talk about the revolution in horsemanship is to promote that revolution and talk about the revolution. You've done this as a non-professional. We all know you got a full-time job and of course now a big dean job. But you're showing us all how it's done. And you're proving that you can win on a blind horse, and you can prove that a relationship-based natural horsemanship foundation can help you do amazing things. And I'm just so proud of being able to interview you regardless of your relationship with me. I'm proud to interview you tonight, but it's even better that it's the love of my life, my wife, René Turnbull. And thank you so much for being here tonight, honey.
Thanks, can I show a video?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as long as you can do the share. Yeah.
Okay. I want to share this one because this is my perspective. This is me videoing Astro from the saddle.
Now step down, easy down. Good boy, easy down. Good boy, easy down. Easy down. Step down, step down, easy down. Easy down. Good boy, step down. Let's look at this one. Okay, step down here, step down.
Yep, that's the trail I want to ride.
That's
I was on that trail with you, and if I recollect, if we would have looked to our left, that was a cliff.
Yeah, it was. It was like a 300-foot drop off, and I'm afraid of heights.
Yeah, and so
I had to trust my horse because I am so afraid of heights. Oh, terrified of heights. I just want to thank everybody for coming. And you know what, when we make a commitment, I just want to say this, when we make a commitment to our animals, some people buy and sell their horses, and they do, and that's okay. And you always make sure you're sending them to a good home and stuff. Ours come to our home, and you know, we've got two 25-year-olds right now and a blind, you know, lame horse. I want you guys to know that the reason I'm not still competing Astro competitively is not because he's blind. It's because his arthritis is so bad that he's what you would call serviceably sound, but he's not good for mountains anymore. His arthritis is just, after so many years, it's not fair to him to make him do the steep stuff, but we still ride. But we make the commitment to the animal, and he became blind, and now, you know, not really all that sound. I'm still committed to him. You know, he's my guy, and we still snuggle, and we still, you know, have this relationship. And he'll still do anything for me, and I will do anything for him. A young girl we know, a young lady we know, her competition horse has just been diagnosed with uveitis, and the diagnosis sounded so bad from the vets that they thought they were going to have to put him down. And I just talked to them the other day on the phone, and we've known them since these girls were like in junior high school, and now she's out of college, getting married. And she's a national champion with her horse, and he's pretty functionally blind. By the time they figured it out, there was nothing they could do. But they were thinking they were going to have to put him down because he was in pain. And I talked to her, and I said, no, it's, you know, manageable. The pain is manageable. The inflammation is manageable. You really need to talk to the doctors carefully. And I wanted to say that, you know, she spent so much time with his horse over the years, winning these national championships and ranch riding and everything, and traveling to Texas for all these different shows. And I said, you know, he's blind, but he's still the same horse. And the same thing that Dr. Lasseline told me, which was, what were you doing before you knew he was blind? I was riding him. She says, so that's what you're going to do now. And I told this young lady the same thing, because what would it be like if you had this friend who came to see you every day, and you did all these fun things, and you did this training, and you went through all these things, and you practiced, and you did all of this, and then one day your friend just didn't come anymore. You know, one day your friend just didn't come anymore, or she came out, but she rode somebody else, or, you know, you were no longer her best friend. How would that make you feel? What would happen? You know, how would you feel? I mean, your horse doesn't know that something changed. Your horse doesn't know that you just found out that he was blind. So the fact is, still the same horse. You know, he's still the same horse. And why would I abandon a friendship like that? Can't, you know, I can't. In my heart, I couldn't do it. So anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you for having me. And Andrew, yeah, thanks for the interview, hon. Do I get dinner when I get home?
Absolutely, that's a fair deal. Hey, to everybody across America who supports what we're doing here, the IHA people who are kind enough to have me be their host, the magazine, all the work that people do, and everyone on this call that's involved in natural horsemanship and the revolution in horsemanship. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for being here. And thank you so much to Renee for sharing her story. Say goodnight, and may the horse be with you.
I love to ride my